What's up, everybody? It's George from Crypto Potato. Today, we're here with Jaime Rogozinski, the founder of the WallStreetBets subreddit. WallStreetBets was first founded in 2012, but it really gained mass popularity this year following the explosion of the GameStop saga. In this episode, we discuss how they managed to get on the headline of every financial media outlet in the world, as well as what can we expect from them in the future. So make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, stay tuned, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss on any new episode coming in the future. Right. So we have Jaime Rogozinski here, the founder of one of arguably the most popular subreddits out there, Wall Street Bets. So Jaime, Wall Street Bets is safe to say one of the most spectacular phenomena that happened this year. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? I'm curious to know, like, what kind of person it takes to create something like that, and what motivates you to do it. And yeah,
Yeah. First of all, thanks a lot for having me.
thanks for agreeing to be here.
So Wall Street Bets, well, I guess I could talk about myself a little bit. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I studied computer engineering and economics. So I have a bit of a mix of technology along with business. And right out of college, started a handful of companies, some of them wildly successful, some of them spectacular failures, just like any good entrepreneur.
Right.
I lived most of my adult life in the US, and I've been living in Mexico for about 7 years now. What kind of person does it take? Look, I'm very intellectually curious,
Okay.
and I'm very, very interested in the mechanics of how things work, right? And when I started learning about the stock market, first I wanted to figure out a way to take my expendable money. I had disposable income that I could put to work and hoping to be able to grow that a lot. And it's obvious that risk and return go hand in hand, and I was okay with risking what I had to risk, right? But as I started learning about the stock market, specifically ETFs, and I'm talking about like the synthetic leveraged exotic variety that do really fancy things that just kind of blew my mind. I was like, why do these things exist? How is it possible? How is it even legal, right?
Right.
Because they allow you to circumvent all sorts of things. If you want to short a stock, you have to have certain margin requirements because of the risks associated, the unlimited loss potential, blah, blah, blah. But you could just purchase a share of an inverse ETP and you offload that risk to somebody else. And oftentimes you can buy leveraged versions of that. So it's, 2x or 3x the amount. And then you can buy stock options on top of that. Which, there's the leverage is pretty crazy. And then you have these other ones that are just on the VIX, right? The VIX being like the volatility index, commonly referred to as the fear gauge or the fear index. It's just a math formula. It literally just, you take all the implied volatility from the stock option. It's really complicated, but they packaged it like a stock, right? And you can short that stock or you buy a leverage. So to me, I was like, wow, this is pretty nuts, right? And so I took this approach of saying, I'd love to start a community that can discuss these things and point out some of the absurdities that exist in the market and start some interesting dialogues. And I'd say that I never anticipated the growth that this has had, and it's transcended beyond just a website or a forum or a subreddit. Now it's like an idea with varieties on different countries, India street bets and Korea street bets and silver street bets and has Satoshi street bets and all sorts of different things. Everyone's a street bets now on all platforms. And that's pretty cool.
So it's kind of a movement now.
Yeah.
A pretty big movement. Yeah. So did you start all of this alone, or did you have help from the beginning? Like, did you start it? Was it a constant team effort from the get-go, or did you start it on your own?
No, it was just a hobby. I started on my own, right? Like anyone can start a subreddit, much like anyone can start a Facebook group or an Instagram account. And I literally just kind of created it, and I laid some of the kind of the tone, right? To say, hey, this is where we can talk about stocks or equities or stock options or whatever, just investments in a risky fashion, in a kind of a laissez-faire approach where people can just not worry about being overly academic about things or overly pompous about things, and just being able to kind of have fun with what they're doing. Eventually, as the subreddit started growing, I got more and more moderators to get involved. Eventually, Reddit provides this auto moderators, like a computer that you can set rules, and a lot of the moderation is done for you. But it started just as a little hobby that I did on my own. Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk about a little bit about GameStop? Because I think that's sort of when it all exploded, right? When everybody started talking about Wall Street bets, with the craziness that went on with GameStop. How did it happen? I mean, how was the stock picked? Can you give us a little bit more info about this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd have to rewind a little bit before GameStop to provide some context, right? Throughout the
Okay.
years of Wall Street Bets, there's been kind of these meme stocks that go into fashion, right?
Right.
Years ago, you had a lot of people that were into AMD, and the quirky CEO associated with that, and then Tesla and Apple for a while, and Google. It just kind of keeps morphing. This was 5 years ago or whatnot, and then people just kind of keep selecting different ones. There's a bit of a pattern as to which stocks tend to be to become memes. Oftentimes these are stocks that are like tangible, that people can feel or relate to, not these abstract companies that
Right.
just do these really crazy things. Whenever there's volatility in a particular stock, that tends to get a lot of attention from people. uh, and it's with no rhyme or reason. It's the same way that sometimes you'll see a video go viral on YouTube or TikTok or whatnot. The same thing happens on Wall Street Bets, right? There's certain elements or certain properties that all these viral videos have, and same with these stocks. But for the most part, it really is a community-driven effort where anybody can submit and anybody can decide to upvote or downvote based off of how informative or entertaining or whatever people just like it. And so with GameStop specifically, we have a guy, Keith Gill,
Right.
who goes by DFV and goes by Roaring Kitty on
Right.
YouTube. He had this passion for GameStop. He really liked it, and he's a gamer, and he's also a smart analyst, right? He understands the purpose of the stock. So he's been touting, and he had his own investment in this for well before this year, and eventually I think it just kind of caught fire, just like a viral video. GameStop specifically had properties that made it susceptible to the short squeeze, the type of move that we saw. Oftentimes you see people say, oh, it's just a short squeeze. You have short sellers on one side and you have a lot of people buying the stock on the other side. In this case, it was that, but it was more sophisticated than that. And if somebody wanted to do that same type of short squeeze on I don't know, Apple or Tesla, they'd be harder pressed to pull that off, just because of a lot of the properties. So there were more components, and that's what really made it explode. Of course, once the media gets a hold of this thing and
Right.
everyone's talking about it, then it's just adding fuel to the fire.
Right. And this whole thing, obviously, we can say that it lit some sort of a spark, and we saw millions of people talking about it. Your subreddit is now over 10 million, I think. And but we also saw the other side of it. The big players, they also started talking about it, and almost immediately after what happened to GameStop, we saw Nasdaq CEO say that they're potentially looking to halt trading of certain stocks in case of increased social media chatter. What's your take on this? Because it's obviously a fine line, right? On one side, we have investor protection concerns because it's obvious that not everyone involved in GameStop was a winner. And on the other side, though, we have pretty much censorship. I mean, if they start interfering with free market dynamics, like why would they hold a stock just because people are talking about it on social media? So these are the two, counter arguments against what Nasdaq CEO said. And what do you think about it? Like, What's your view on
You
this?
know, I didn't see that particular quote. Obviously, I'm aware of a lot of talk revolving this subject, so I can't speak specifically to that one. But you know, to the best of my understanding, the halting took place on the broker side. So if it's the
Right,
same, if that quote is relating to the same concept, then the halting had very little, if nothing, to do with the protection of investors or whatever it might be. Because you know, if an exchange or broker wants to halt trading because they're worried about little guys losing money, then they're almost like a financial advisor, right? Like that's not
right,
their role. Or even the conspiracy theories went as far as saying, well, no, they're doing it to protect the big hedge funds because they're losing a lot of money. Well, that's the same thing. They're not in charge of controlling the price, right? They're in
right,
charge of making sure that the market functions. If people take risks, there's already a lot of regulation that's in place to prevent or to protect the consumer, right? Like if you want to be a day trader, which is a risky activity, you buy and sell a lot, you need to have a certain amount of capital. You need to have $25,000 to be able to do that. If you want to trade leveraged derivatives like stock options or futures or forex, you have to, you have to go through, you have to meet certain requisites by the broker itself, right? And how strictly enforced is a different thing.
right,
So there's already mechanisms in place to say, look, do this at your own risk, and here are the risks, and here's how we mitigate it. People do make money and lose money in the stock market. That's always been the name of the game. But more specifically, what happened when they did actually halt the trading, it had to do with a much more boring explanation than people have the attention span to understand. Robinhood got a lot of the blame for what happened, uh, primarily because they're the biggest broker in that space. I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm guessing Robinhood was, one of the primary
right,
brokers involved with this GameStop thing. But all brokers had to restrict trading to some capacity. Pretty much all brokers had to do some restrictions. And it has to do with this back end archaic system that's been around since, since stock trading dealt with passing certificates on a horseback across Manhattan and having somebody kind of consolidate that the next day, whatever this settlement process that takes 2 days that continues with other things. If I want to deposit a check in my bank, or if I want to make like an ACH transfer, these things should be instant, but they're old, and that kind of caused this bottleneck. This feedback loop between the counterparties and the clearing houses and the brokers and the payment for order flow and all these things that required a lot of capital to keep that type of trade going with that volatility. And eventually that's what halted the trading with that, but on that note, that one of the good things that happened out of this entire chapter was that you had a lot of attention on this. And so now regulators, had conversations, congressional hearings, and you had a lot of attention on this matter. Hopefully they'll be able to fix that. But I also believe that it's not just the government's job to fix that. I think that the individual people are also capable of doing that by exerting pressure on the system. And I believe they're doing that in the crypto world, right? The crypto world is something that's already figured that out. It's technologically possible to settle something instantly or
right,
quickly, at least.
right. Did you expect this reaction from the community, from the crypto community? Because it kind of makes sense, right? When we talk about Bitcoin, it's one of the first definitive efforts to separate state from money, and a lot of people see Wall Street as somewhat of a movement of like the little guy against the big guy, the big players, the institutional investors, hedge funds, the suits, and all that. Did you anticipate this kind of reaction from the crypto community? Because it was, to me personally, it was mind blowing. Like for a few days or even weeks, everyone was talking. The only thing that we were talking about was Wall Street bets. Yeah, and
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wasn't expecting that from any community. I got messages from, I got this one memorable message from a taxi driver in Spain. He goes, "Look, I don't understand any of these things. I don't get it. I just know that what you're doing is awesome. You're a hero. Keep it up." Like, and so I didn't expect that from pretty much any community. I think that there's a lot of pent up kind of emotions from the Occupy Wall Street days, and I think crypto to some capacity is also linked to that, right? Bitcoin
Right.
started at that same time with a lot of language that was like, let's separate this thing, and central banks that, and inflation and whatnot. And so I think that there was this kind of feeling of empowerment for the little guys, which is a nice story. The real truth is it's not really black and white. There's no little guys and big guys. It's all super
Right.
interconnected. We'll never be able to split these two things, but we can coexist. And it's pretty cool that now the little guys have found a way to actually be able to voice their opinion and to take control over their situation.
Right, but then at the same time, what happened with Robinhood and with the marriage rate, with their halt of the trading, it kind of felt like the entire thing was like the system that these brokerages are operating on. It kind of felt like as soon as the little guy took control, his their control was taken over. Like, at least that's what a lot of people felt like, and that's what I saw
Yeah.
scouting
No,
social media. And
that was the narrative, and it was to some extent the true narrative, right? Here's the little guys finally being able to make a lot of money, to stick it to the short sellers, to really, to really take control and to be able to have a collective voice, and then it gets yanked from them. So
right,
people are very right in feeling the way that they felt. The unfortunate truth behind this is, the brokers also obviously are not faultless. They should be able to predict the unpredictable to some capacity, should be able to be prepared for this. But Robinhood specifically got hit with like a $3 billion
right,
margin call, and they have to come up with $3 billion overnight using this archaic system that takes 3 days to settle
right,
$3 billion.
right,
And they figured it out, and they eventually allowed you to start kind of trading it again by the next day. But the damage was done, and it was, it's unquestioned that there was damage, and those feelings definitely they were the predominant feeling of these congressional hearings, because even the government took the side of the little guys, say, hey, well, why is this happening? But hopefully that leads to these improvements that I'm talking about, from the government, because they want to regulate, but it's a slow process, or from the crypto side that's saying, hey guys, we got these figured out. This would have never happened here.
right. So you're now working on a decentralized app.
That's
Um,
correct. Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about it? What's it all about? And
So
what's your plan with it?
I've been following crypto since it started. Yeah, early, 20, right around Wall Street Bets ish, maybe a year later or so. I even tried to buy some Bitcoin and gave up because it was just not intuitive, and
Right,
I had my passion in the stocks at that point. But I followed it from an academic standpoint. As an economist, I love the idea. It's really well thought out. From a technology standpoint, I also love it. It's really well thought out. And I just kind of saw it as an experiment to say, let's see how things go. But I never went back to reevaluate my stance. I just kind of saw the prices of Bitcoin, and see some of the developments of the different coins and different technologies they're branching off of this original blockchain concept. And I recently took a deep dive into what's really out there, and I regret and readily admit that I made a mistake at not reevaluating my stance with Bitcoin, which was just, oh, it's interesting, to really what it is. And what I'm working with now is a bridge. A lot of times when you hear cryptocurrencies, we're talking about specific coins meant to buy things, and people trying to just make money from it, right? Like, oh,
right,
which one's going to go to the moon, and you buy it and you
right,
hold it and it goes up, and that's uninteresting. It's cool if you can make money, and you can also lose money, but it's not something that's stimulating for me, right? It's just the supply and demand. But what I'm doing now is working with this group that's creating a decentralized organization, a DAO, a DApp, whatever, where people buy these WSB DApp tokens, and they become part of the governance, and they're able to vote on things, and they're able to exert control over this organization. And what this organization does is it puts together investment vehicles, right? So stock people will know these as ETFs. We're referring to them as ETPs and exchange traded portfolios.
Okay.
What that is you have the people say, all right, guys, let's do a YOLO ETP. And so we'll put, I don't know, Tesla, and we'll put Bitcoin in there. We'll wrap it up into a ETP and we'll throw it out there for anybody to buy, not just people that are part of this thing. And people can then say, oh, cool, I can buy this. And what's neat is these are collateralized ETPs, right? You own them, you own your keys. It's not like pooled funds or anything like that. It's literally an investment in the purest sense. And it combines both equities and crypto. And in fact, once you get into equities, you can really get into pretty much all investment vehicles, because equities include ETFs, which include things from the crazy VIX thing that I was talking about earlier, to mortgage-backed securities, to metals, to energies, to all sorts of different things. And even cooler than that is we can expand outside of just U.S. equities. Something that is, I haven't yet seen some kind of comprehensive tool that allows you to do that. I can't buy Samsung easily because it trades in a different country.
Right.
So you have these guys, they come together, they say, okay, let's make this YOLO ETP. They do that, they put it out there, and then anyone can buy it. Now let's do a Warren Buffett or anti-inflation ETP, right? Like, which is one that's being worked on right now. And so they combine different types of stable fiat currencies, and I don't know what they're putting in there, but it's just not meant to really get rich quick, but it's just meant to be a store of value and throw these out there. And they can put out as many as they want, as long as there's enough demand and liquidity to pull these things off. And once people start buying into it, it creates this collects this 2% annualized fee, this management fee, which is the same as regular ETFs, and that rolls up into a treasury wallet, which the very governance can then decide how to spend. So we want to pay dividends to ourselves. We want to invest it in buying more of these coins and burning them. Do we want to buy Super Bowl commercials, et cetera, right? So it's a pretty neat thing. And it's bridging the world of Wall Street with crypto, which for too long, I think, has still been separated.
But is it synthetics? Like, say you create a portfolio which has Bitcoin, Ethereum, but it also has like Tesla, Apple, the YOLO portfolio, as you call it. So I assume the stocks, then they will be synthetic assets, not the real thing.
Correct. Yeah, they are synthetic, but they're collateralized, right? So along the way, like I have, because I've just now started diving into this subject.
Right.
It would be a mistake to have me take care, take over the technical components of it. We have a really experienced team that's doing that, and they're working with synthetics, FTX, mirror, this, that, but just a bunch of these technologies that exist out there that are able to create. So when you say synthetics, if you're referring to the company, or if you're just referring to this kind of derivative
The
based
derivative,
security, yeah. So in that sense, then yes, it is a synthetic derivative, right? Because we're not an exchange by any means.
right.
But along the way, some provider, some intermediary counterparty has to actually buy the stock in order to replicate that price point, right?
Right. Okay.
And so that's really important, because that allows these investment vehicles to be not only collateralized, which is safe for the person who's purchasing it, but also to have an effect on the market, right? Like that the whole idea of the stock market isn't just a short squeeze. Like everyone's really excited about doing that and whatever, and I think it's going to be a fad that's going to kind of wither down. But the process of price discovery, of providing liquidity to a market, is good in every sense of the word. It's an actual productive activity. And so having underlying securities being purchased or sold along the way is a really important component of this, because it makes everything real. Now you have people that are voicing their opinion and equally empowered.
Okay. Well, I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk to you about. Do you have any other future plans? Like what else can we expect from Wall Street Bets and from you going forward, apart from your dad?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So for anyone that wants to learn about what I just talked about, they go to wallstreetbets.net, all spelled out. And that's the site for this project. And they can read about these things there. As far as what I'm concerned, I'm involved with all sorts of fun projects. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And and I continue to do so. Right, I signed a deal with a movie studio, and they're working on doing that. Although it doesn't necessarily take up much of my time, it's something that I'm enjoying the process of, because it's talking about the nature of the stock market and just the trends, and where things are going, and that should be fun. I've also restarted a project that I started last year, and I even announced it last year before coronavirus killed my dreams, which was to create this kind of a league, a competitive day trading league, right? And I envisioned having this kind of a final event where you have 10 or 12 finalists sit in a live stage, right? Like in an esports style arena where everyone
Right.
is watching these guys actually trade real monies live over a couple days in the stock market to see who the best person is, and kind of just taking things to the extreme. Everyone talks about how everything's gamified. Well, let's turn it into a
Right.
game. Why not? Right? Like,
Right.
just it should be real. So that's gonna, that it was bad that I had to cancel it last year, but it was good because now the number of people interested in this is much bigger, and so it's a lot more fun. Also getting involved with some of, there's a lot of conversations around how crypto is bad for the environment and it's not eco-friendly, whatever. Working with some pretty interesting people, and when I'm ready to talk about that publicly, I'll say who those people are. But they're high profile individuals that also want to really get ahead of the curve and have these green uh, mining uh, operations that are able to support the crypto in a way that's sustainable, and a handful of other things that revolve either around entertainment and finance combined, and very much now including crypto in that conversation.
Okay. Are you following the debate on green Bitcoin mining and what's going on in China and all that?
Probably less than most people that have been doing this for a lot longer. I'm following to a certain extent. A lot of what I know about this, I can infer it just from experience, right? Like oftentimes when you see these conversations saying, "No, you're killing the environment, global warming because of your Bitcoin," and I just stop and I think about it a little bit, and I say, so how much, how bad is it for the environment when you print money, right? Like,
Right.
you have to kill a tree to get the paper. Well, it's not paper, but whatever the materials for. You got to get your printing presses up. You got, all that stuff burns. And then you have to get your truck that drives it with gasoline to the bank. And then the bank ATM machine that goes to the store. And then the truck has to go back to the store, pick it up and take it back to the bank. Like, to me, it's like, all right, I don't know the numbers, and I'm sure that somebody's already studied this, but it's kind of silly that the crypto community is one of the very few, or the crypto industry is one of the very few industries that has to kind of like post,
Numbers.
their carbon,
Yeah.
emission numbers, right? When like when all the other ones don't. I think it's just I haven't formulated my opinion enough to articulate it properly, but it's obviously a political movement, and it's got a lot of motivations behind there, and one that just doesn't add up. So while I've read some things, most of it's just common sense that there's obviously a PR battle taking place.
Right. Well, thank you very much for this interview. It was a pleasure for me and for our entire website. Looking forward to chatting with you guys again, maybe when your DApp is released or whenever you finish some of your other exciting
Well, to
endeavors.
be clear, so the DApp is in the process of coming to fruition, but we're well into the launch stages. So a month
Okay.
or two ago, we launched the DApp. You can now purchase it, and
So it's
now
live,
there's
yeah.
like farming and liquidity related operations and things that are probably
Okay.
your community will understand. And they've just voted on the first ETP, and they're putting together some of these other tools. So within the next 3 or 4 months, we're going to start putting all these pieces together. Obviously, this is a really innovative thing that's never been done before like this. So we're aware of this, and we're trying not to get ahead of ourselves, to do one little step at a time. And so we have a timeline of 6 months before everything is up and running 100%. But in the meantime, anyone that's interested can already start getting involved.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Uh, Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah.
Have a good one.